simply leads us to believe that they play a significant part in the economy of the state of Tennessee as well as the economy of the nation. Dr. LMadu, let's pick up where we left off in reference to that.
Yeah, like the last statistics show that the whole immigrants in the United States contributed $775 billion to the economy. Most of the new inventions, you know, that MIT, Caltech, Harvard, are by immigrants, one quarter, you know, of them. You know, most of the PhDs are immigrants. That's one of the reasons, you know, the Silicon Valley and all this wants to keep them. Now, overall, why do immigrants come? Some of them come because of the conditions in their countries. Some of them are professionals, you know, who've been, you know, granted some visas, you know, employment visas to be here. Some of them came also because of civil strife. For example, I mentioned the El Salvadorians. You know, the Nicaraguans were also given waivers, you know, to come here when there was strife in the country between the Sandinistas, you know, and the United States government. A lot of them were given visas to come here. When there was problem in Vietnam, you know, when the Saigon government fell, you know, hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese were given visas to come to the United States. When Saddam Hussein was overthrown, you know, hundreds of thousands of Kurds, you know, were given visas to come here also. And in fact, Nashville has the largest number of Kurds in the whole United States. You have about 11,000 Kurds who are resettled here in Nashville, Tennessee. That's why they call Nashville the little Kurdistan.
Kurdistan.
Or the southern Kurdistan, you know, of the United States, because this is the where you have the largest number. When there was strife in Somalia, you know, after the overthrow of President Siad Barre, a lot of Somalis were given, you know, visas to come to this country. You know, that's why you have about 5,000 Somalis who are settled here in Nashville, Tennessee. You know, people don't know that this is one of the largest Somali, you know, community in the country. When there was strife in Sudan, you know, the Southern Sudanese, the State Department also gave them a lot of visas to resettle here in the United States. About 2,500 of them were resettled here. When there was strife in Ethiopia, you know, when Mengistu's government was overthrown and there was civil war, a lot of thousands of Ethiopians also given visas to come to the United States and stay. A lot of them ended up here in Nashville. You know, same from Uganda, same from Tanzania. Then in Asia, you know, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, they all have agreements to you know, a number of refugees or legal immigrants, you know, every year to the United States. Now the problem we are having is that a lot of, you know, those that the government wants to send back, you know, to their countries have been here for long, you know, established and all that, which is the 11 million we're talking about. But at the same time, this 11 million contribute a whole lot of money to the United States economy. And most of their employers actually want them to stay. Because without those workers, those companies will fold. You've seen a lot of companies shutting down here and there, you know, before. Yeah, when a lot of when the deportation rate, you know, was spiking up, a lot of them started going back, you know, to Mexico or to Nicaragua, where they came from, until they stopped again and they started coming back. You see, so a lot of businesses, particularly the housing business, agriculture business, they need them because some of the jobs they do, most people won't do it for the price that the employers are willing to pay. You know, now if an employer is willing to pay somebody $4 an hour to dig ditches on the road, most Americans would accept that, you know, that kind of money for anything. How much more digging, you know, ditches on the road. So when you have those people send them back, that employer loses a lot of money, and what happens? The company folds up. And you know that most businesses in this country are created by small businesses, you know, who are 10, 20, 30 people, 50 people here and there. And most of those small businesses need these kind of workers because the wages are not high. They don't have to pay social security and all this. They just pay them. You know?
And sometimes it's paying in cash and just forget the whole thing. No tax records or no kind of records. And that's now, is that that's a real problem in terms of immigrant? Now, what about the labor unions in the state of Tennessee? How do they feel about this immigrant population, Dr. Madu?
Well, I think, it's twofold. The labor union supports legalization and paying them fair and adequate wages because you benefit the unions, instead of paying them under the table. So the union is strongly in favor of legalization. Exactly. But at the same time, doesn't want mass deportations because it will affect them too. You see, because if a lot of those companies and organizations who belong to labor union are heavily influenced with the Latino population, particularly in California. You talk of the growers business and all this, they are predominantly from Latin America, you see. So the labor union is caught in between. But the best, policy is favor, legalization, but at the same time, fair wages for these immigrants. Because at times it becomes exploitation. See, when you use them and don't pay them adequately. But then most of them, since they're undocumented, cannot complain anyway. Okay, they won't complain. That's the problem. So even if they are not paid, they won't even complain for fear of surfacing and the authorities, getting them.
And so they're sort of under fear of not receiving the kind of adequate wage, but at the same time they're also fearful of the fact that if they make too much noise about it, then they might not have a job at all. And if they don't have a job at all, then they are almost automatically deported because of no wages or no jobs and et cetera. And so
that's correct.
Well, now, Dr. Madu, looking over this whole issue, and I think we've talked about Tennessee, and I think the same thing could be said in reference to many other states, especially in the Southeast, et cetera. But now, when we talk about having a national immigration policy, what are some of the options that the government has now in reference to this policy?
Well,
we've got about 2 minutes.
The government has an option of, quite frankly, legalizing those already in the country. And that's what a lot of, immigration advocates want to see. It's difficult to expel 11 million people, most of them with families, wives, children, all this. It's just not going to happen that way, see? And that's why the government wants to legalize immigrants, within a certain space of time. Let everybody, have a green card or a temporary green card to see how they behave in so many years, and then you get a permanent green card. Then you can apply for citizenship. I think that's what the government wants to do. At the same time, there are some elements within the immigration bill that they are fighting over now that is unfavorable. For example, they want to drop what they call the lottery diversity visa. That would be unfair because a lot of Africans who come here, that's the only opportunity they have for legal immigration is that diversity visa. Okay, when the government drops that, then you deny them the right to come here because they're not, Africa and the United States don't have contiguous borders. Africans can't cross. They have to come through the ocean 11,000 miles away.
And so they have to have some kind of special visa in order to make sure that they have access to an opportunity here.
Absolutely.
And of course, Dr. Madu, I think we're getting ready for the final statements in reference to this. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.